Hi, it's Teresa Law. Thanks for joining us for our most recent teen video. And tonight we're going to talk about pop art and multiple images. I'm just going to go through the materials list first, make sure we have everything that you need tonight. You need white paper, number 2 pencil, eraser, ballpoint pen, a ruler, a black Sharpie, and you can use either markers with this, colored pencils, crayons, or a combination of the three. If you picked up the kit from the library, there's a practice sheet in there that I made that has a simple cupcake design on it. It's just for you to try out different color theories. There's also a reference sheet in the packet from the library. One is a color wheel. We'll talk about that in a minute. The other is a page that has a lot of explanations about different colors that you might want to use in your project. And then to do this project, you just need a simple image that you can use on a grid. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about pop art so you know why we're doing this. Pop art started in the 1950s, and the thing that was very, very different about it, that makes it still popular today, is that it used items that are in popular culture. That's where the name comes from. Things in the past, things would be like a landscape would be like a beautiful scene, or there'd be portraits of people. Pop art was basically every common day object that you could make into art, things that you wouldn't necessarily think of being a subject of a painting. One of the biggest proponents, probably one of the more famous ones, is Andy Warhol. If you have time and you're looking for something to do, if you go to Google Image and you just put in pop art, you'll see a ton of images. Some of them are vintage, like from the 60s and 70s, and then some of them are more recent. So if you have all your supplies together, then we will start. Okay, so if you picked up the kit from the library, you have a longer sheet of paper. It's about 12 inches by 18 inches. Now, the very first project that we did together, we talked about grids, and now these large pieces of paper, you can actually make the grid any way you would like. If you want to divide your paper into 4 pieces, you could use it horizontally like this. You could make your image vertical this way. You can divide your paper into smaller boxes, 6 boxes, and you can do the same thing. You can either do it vertically or horizontally. If you want, you can make even more boxes, images to go on your picture. So basically you can divide it into as many small boxes as you would like, or if you'd like to stay with like the larger ones like the first one, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to show you a poster that I used to use in the classroom. Whoops. This is from a company called NASCO. They're basically an art supply provider for the schools. And this is a very good example of a pop art image. So of course you know this is Mona Lisa. And this is very similar to what we did a few videos back when we did positive negative, where you took a famous person and you changed it into a black and white picture and then a high contrast. So this is a high contrast image of Mona Lisa. And the thing about pop art that's interesting is the use of color. The thing about these are color, it's considered flat color. In other words, there's no shading in any of these images. It's basically a flat color that you put down. Now, even if you look at the color green, there's a green that's probably straight out of the bottle. This is more of a yellow green over here in this section. Then you have blue green up in here. So the thing about this is there's no right or wrong way to do it, and the colors that you pick out for your project are going to be totally your own choice. But this is a very good example of it. Now, you can use crayons, markers, colored pencils. Now, if you didn't get the sheets from the library and you're working with computer paper, basically the same idea. You can divide your paper any way that you like. Now, let me use this one so it's a little bit bigger, you can see it. If I wanted to, and say my image was ballet slippers, I would probably do it in the vertical position and I would have my slippers going this way. But on the other hand, if I wanted to do something like an Xbox controller, the image would be horizontal, so I would want to work this way. Okay. So here's an example of Andy Warhol's work. Now, in this instance, it's basically primary colors, yellow, red, and blue. And the thing that Andy Warhol is most known for are his silk screens, where he did multiple images of famous people. Now, again, keep in mind this is the 1960s, 1970s, so his idea of famous people back then would be Jacqueline Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe. Here's one of his famous ones with good old-fashioned Campbell's soup can. So that's what makes him unique and famous, is that he was the first one to really do this. Now, if you were to do this today, probably you would think of people like maybe Kim Kardashian, Justin Bieber, someone who's in the popular culture today as opposed to back then. Now, I made a very, very simple design. It's just a cupcake, and I did it on, in this case, it's on the 4 panels. Now, I'm going to show you 3 different media that I used: crayons, markers, colored pencils, and we'll talk a little bit about the color. Now, in the packet that came with the library kit, or if you downloaded it from online, I included a sheet on color. So a lot of this you know because you've had art in grammar school and high school. So the primary color is easy peasy, and that's basically what the cover of that magazine was. And then the secondary colors, when you combine 2 primaries, you make a secondary color. And then there's tertiary. Tertiary are the names of the primary first and then the secondary color. Then you have cool colors. So everything on one half of the color wheel is warm and the other half is cool. Complementary colors are opposite each other on the color wheel. And then down here I just explained some other things. For instance, analogous colors would be colors that are similar, that are near each other on the wheel, they touch. For example, blue, green, green, and yellow, green are next to each other on the color wheel, so they would be considered analogous. Complementary colors are opposite, directly opposite each other on a color wheel. And then monochromatic colors, mono means one, chroma is color. So it's one color, and then a tint is when you take white and you add that one color, or if you take that color and you add black, that's considered a shade. So those 3 combined make a monochromatic painting. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you about the color wheel. Now, I included a picture of a color wheel because if you haven't used the tertiary colors very much, they're good choices for this project. You want to avoid, I think, using the same colors all the time, like red, blue, yellow. Primary colors are interesting, but if you try to use colors that are less familiar, I think you'll get more interesting color combinations, and I think it's less controlled that way. So these are the names of all those secondary, and these are the secondary and primaries, and now here are the tertiaries. Now, crayons, for instance, Crayola, it'll say like blue, violet, or red, orange, whatever. Some colored pencils come with the names on them too. Sometimes you just have to eyeball it because they'll call it something like Tangerine Sun, and it doesn't tell you what the color is. So you just have to look at it and say, okay, this is halfway between yellow and dark orange, and then you can figure it out for yourself. So these are the colors that we're looking for on our crayons and things. Okay, now here's some samples that I colored for you. I wanted to show you. So the first one I did is basically primary colors. In my personal opinion, my least favorite set of colors. However, if you're doing something to make it look cartoony, then red, blue, and yellow, definitely the primary colors. Now this one I did with markers, and these are what we call analogous colors. In other words, they're all blue, so they're all near each other on the color wheel. These are all in the green family, so they're analogous colors. All in the orange family, all in the purple family. So this one's interesting in the sense that the colors are a little bit bolder. Now, I'm going to show you in a minute a way to use your marker to color that might make your picture more solid. Because when you're filling in a space like this, if you kind of scribble with the marker, it's going to be hard to cover all the territory. So I'm going to show you a way to do it that might help you. Here's a sample that I did with crayons. And the thing that was fun about this one, I have a very big selection of crayons in a container. So I basically just reached in and took any color kind of randomly, and then I applied it to the picture. So there was no plan with this one. I didn't pick out specific colors. It was totally random, but I like the way it looks. I have warm colors against cool colors. Orange would be a warm color. Blue is considered cool, so that gave me contrast. Same thing here. This is like a kind of a goldy brown color. And then I have it against a green, which is a cool color. So it came out interesting because there was no pattern to it. I just kind of winged it. Okay, here's an example of colored pencil. This is an example of warm versus cool. It happened that my 4 backgrounds, I used cool colors. You can see there's 2 different colors of green. Here's a purple and here's a blue. Now, the cupcake colors, I used warm colors to give it that contrast. So here, between the oranges and the reds and magenta, it works well against the green. Against the blue, I have orange and yellow, again, warm colors against a cool background. Same thing down here, these are all warm colors, and they're against a background of cool colors. Same thing here. Now, this looks almost as intense as the one I did with markers. The colors are very vivid, okay? So I'm going to show you in a second how you can use colored pencils to get this effect, to make it more solid looking. Okay, so let's put these away for a second. Okay, now, the other thing, depending on what size paper you're going to use, you have to determine if you're going to keep the paper, again, vertically or horizontally. So I'm going to take this paper, for instance, the smaller size. Now, how do you get your image in the same spot each time? Whoops. Okay, so here's a cupcake that I cut out one of my sheets. Now, I want it to be in the same spot each time. So the way you would do that is what we call registering it. So in this case, if I put this up in the corner of this picture, okay, now I can, as we've done before, if I color the back of this, this is just number 2 pencil. I'm darkening the back of the image. Okay. And I'm going to put it right up into this corner. And I'm going to make an arrow here to remind myself that this is where it's registering. So in other words, when I move it down here, I want this paper to be in that corner again. So this will be placed in the same position as the one above it. If I put it here, it'll come out the same. So in other words, you don't want one cupcake laying on this line and then the next one's over here and the other one's on the right, the other one's on the left. You want them to look similar. So basically, you're going to do the same thing we've done with other projects. Slide your image in, and then you could take a ballpoint pen, which apparently I don't have here, so I'll use a pencil. And you're going to just transfer your design onto, in this case, it's a panel with 4 sections, a grid with 4. And then I go down like this. Whoops, not to understand the line too well. All right, so there's my image, and I would basically take this corner and lay it in this exact spot I want it each time, and then my picture will come out and they'll be evenly placed. Let's put that aside for a second. Okay, now, in your kit, you have one of these, and it's really just for you to practice with. Like, you can try out color combinations on this sheet, and then when you decide what you want to do on your own paper, you could do that. I would keep it fairly simple. You don't want something so detailed because you have to do it multiple times. It might get a little boring for you. Now, I want to show you that trick I showed you with the colored pencil a minute ago. All right. This is colored pencil. You can see that it's pretty intense. So I'm going to introduce something that you might never have worked with before. So I'm taking, this is a violet pencil. Okay. Now, I'm just going to color this in, and then I'll show you how to do it. The thing with projects like this, and actually I do a lot of drawing, so I would say I use this technique all the time, is to follow the contour of the object. So this is, you can see that this icing goes this way. So if you color in the same direction the object is going, I think it comes out better and you get a more solid look to it. And that's called following the contours of the object. So I'm drawing in the same direction that the object is going. Now, what I want to introduce to you that you might never have used before is something called a blender pencil. Now, different companies call them different things. This one is made by Derwent, which is a British company, and they call it a burnisher. This one is made by, let's see, Prismacolor, and they call it a blender. But basically what they are, they're pencils that don't have color. They're colorless. If you had to say a color, I would say it's beige. And what's nice about these is I have a nice dark color, but with this pencil, what you can do is go back over your coloring. And because it has no color, what it does is just solidifies what you already have down. And I'm getting that more intense color, which when you're done makes it look almost as if you painted it. Because you know yourself, when you're coloring with a colored pencil, if you have to press hard, you know, you feel like your hand is going to fall off. So this way you just color the way you would normally color, and then you take the blender pencil, go over it, and you have a more intense version of the color that you just put down. So this is called, some companies call them Splendor Blenders. They're usually just called blenders. Now, what you can also do if you don't have, well, you probably don't have these because you might never have heard of them before, but you probably have a white colored pencil at home. So now I'm going to do one with a different color. And again, I'm trying to do my drawing in the same direction as the object. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. If I'm doing the paper cup part, I would go in a different direction. I'll show you what I mean. So here I'm putting this color in. And again, you might not have a Splendor Blender pencil or a burnisher at home, but you probably have colored pencils. And if you ever got a set that had white in it, you've probably never used it for anything. So the other thing you can do with a white pencil is use that as a blender. And what they really do, this and the Splendor Blender, is basically the little white areas between your coloring. It kind of closes them up so that your color is more intense and it fills in the spaces better. So again, you get a nice solid looking color, and you can do the same thing with a white pencil if you have that at home. So if you wanted to buy one of these, places like Hobby Lobby, AC Moore, not AC Moore, I keep saying that and they're gone, Michael's, places like that, they're not much, a couple dollars, and they last a long time. You might want to change, like if I did a dark color like this and the next color I was going to blend was yellow, I would probably sharpen it just to get the purple off of there so that I don't smear it into the yellow. Okay, so I wanted to show you that. Now, another thing that was on our color list, let me just grab my list, which is materials. Okay. On here I talk about monochromatic colors, and that's where you take one color and then you add either white or black to it, and you change the value of the color. So in a way, we're using several projects that we've done previously. We're making a grid, which we did with our first project when we did the Chuck Close. And then what you can do, if you decide to do a person on your sheet, this is just like our project where we did positive and negative. I had an image of Jasmine. I traced it on the 4 panels, and then I used my black Sharpie because it was high contrast black and white. And I filled that part in with the black Sharpie just to make it easier. And now I can go back and I can color each of these sections in a different color. So if we go back to the Mona Lisa a minute, I want to show you that the color combinations that you make can be pretty crazy. I mean, she has a blue face, green face, purple face. So I know it's a person, but like, don't be confined to using skin tones. You want this to be very, very colorful. So with our Jasmine, I could go back now and I could make this one color down to here, and then the headband, the earrings, her face, her neck, her chest, her dress, all can be different colors. So each one of these should be different, if that makes sense. Now, what's different about this and our cupcake picture, the cupcake picture is centered. So everything around here is going to wind up being one color. Because with this, it's flat color. We're not trying to like change into 10 colors. It's going to be a color in the back and a color in each section. Now, that's because it didn't touch the sides of the square. In the case of Jasmine, I wanted it to touch the sides. I touched it here and here, and that breaks it in half so that this can be a different color from up here. See what I mean? But this one, whatever color I started with here is going to go all the way around the cupcake. But by touching the edges to the sides, now I can split that into a color, and this can be a different color. Okay. So, go back to monochromatic. I had some 8x10 canvases at home, canvas boards. So I divided this, and I would do it the same way that we did with the sample. I would darken my image. Doesn't have to be a cupcake, but it's what I had. Again, I would make sure that it fits the square the way I want it to, and then that's the corner I'm going to register, and I would move it over and make sure that it's in the corner, and then trace it again. And that way it'll always be centered on my panel. Okay, so here's one that I painted. And by my own admission, I'm not much of an acrylic painter. I do a lot of other media, but this isn't one of them. So this one I transferred it on, and this is Monochromatic Painting. So basically this color, this violet that I have, and it's not violet, what is it? It is lavender. This color is directly out of the bottle. Then I took white paint and black paint, and I altered this. When I started with the lightest here, this one is also a tint. That would be a tint of, what did I just say that was lavender? This would be a tint of lavender. This is a tint of lavender. Then when I added black to the lavender, I got shades. So this is lavender with black added, and this is lavender with even more black added. So I actually have 4 different shades here. Well, 4 in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 altogether, counting the background. I did the same thing with the green and the blue. Basically, a straight bottle of paint. This is right out of the bottle, and then I altered it. Now, this is important. If you're going to do something like this with paint, acrylic paint, to get a tint, you need to start with white first and then add your pigment, add the color, whatever it is. Otherwise, you're going to go through so much paint, you're going to waste so much. So you want to always, when you want to lighten something, start with the white and add the pigment. It'll go much faster. When you want a little bit darker, put another couple drops of the paint in, and you get your next shade. Okay, that makes sense. With the black, it's the opposite. You're going to start with the solid color right out of the bottle. Add a drop of black, just 1 drop, and you'll get a nice darker color. And then to get even darker, maybe 1 more drop of black, and you'll get another darker version of it. So these are the shades of that blue, and this is a tint, and this is a tint. So this whole section is what we call monochromatic. It's 1 color with white and with black. Now, there was another artist who worked around the same time as Andy Warhol, and his name was Lichtenstein. And what he's known for is doing his artwork, his pop art, in the style of comic books. So in his images, there is a lot of yellow, red, and blue, the primary colors, because that's what the comics used. So if I look in here, here's another picture of his. You can see the yellow, the red, and the blue, and he does have some green in this one. Now I'll show you one more one. I'm sorry about that little gap there. We stopped recording for some reason. I'm just going to show you one last thing. We talked about Lichtenstein and how his artwork owed a great debt to comic books. So I'm going to take my acrylic painting, I'm going to take my Sharpie, and I'm going to turn this into more of a Lichtenstein style. So what I'm doing is I'm going over my paint edges with a black Sharpie. I'm going to demonstrate. Okay. So here, I'm just going to freehand this. I'm going to go around with my black Sharpie. It's going to delineate the areas, and it's going to give it the pop art feel of more of a comic book style, because it's going to have a black edge. I could have done a little bit better on that one. Let's just bring this over a little bit. Okay. Now I could do the same thing with this one. Just outline it. So it's a little bit different look from the other things I did. It's a painting, but it's going to have that Lichtenstein kind of comic book look to it. So I would continue to do that for the whole thing. And the only other thing I wanted to show you before the end is just, I wanted to show you, I was talking about coloring in contours. So if I have a marker and say I wanted to color this in with marker, you can just freehand it like you normally would. Or I could use the marker and lay it on its side so it's wider. And I could go in the direction of the object and these long lines, and it's easier to color, it's quicker, it's easier to fill in. Okay. And then I'll just fill the tops in. So when I did this one, you can almost see the linear look of my marker. And that's because I just did it in strokes going the same direction. And when I did this, I went the direction that the icing was going in. And I think that's it. I'm sorry for the little break in the proceedings there. And I will see you next time. Okay, bye.